It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Take command post-game live time. What's up? What's happening? Craig Hoffman alongside Logan Paulsen after a 20-17 win for the Washington Commanders over the New England Patriots. First win for Washington over New England in a very, very long time. Logan, also the first time the New England Patriots have blown a lead at halftime at home in a long time. They're now like 109-4, I think, at Gillette Stadium. We're 109-3 going into the game with the lead at halftime, but the Commanders able to come back in the second half. And to me, Logan, this was a game that should have been a blowout for Washington. There's a couple of plays that changed the scoreline, but they thoroughly dominated. It never felt like the game was in doubt, even if by a scoreline basis, it was in doubt right down until that final drive and the final interception by Quan Martin.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's a lot going on, with regards to the offense. I think the offense had a very solid production. That was something that we were kind of worried about, was like, what's that offense going to look like versus the Bill Belichick led defense. And I thought they came up and did an admirable job of kind of showing who they are, right, and showing what they want to be. And Sam did a great job, and that was really exciting for me to see. And I think the thing that is still semi-disappointing coming out of it is that the defense still kind of at moments, right, in terms of coverage, kind of gave up opportunities where there could have been a big play. And like Jamin, for example, it was like a wheel route late in the game where they kind of do the fake choice, stutter their feet. He goes up the sideline. Great job by Jamin recovering, getting the ball out. But, versus a better quarterback, that's probably a bigger play. So I think like there are a lot of positives to take from the game. I think you're right on in terms of what's going on from an offensive standpoint. I think, defensively, there's a lot of stuff to take away that's positive too, but still, I'm a little disappointed that they couldn't limit the explosive plays from this New England offense. Like, that was a little bit surprising to me. They gave up an explosive run to Ramondre Stevenson on a cross dog that didn't quite hit home. And that's tough, man. That's tough. And if you want to win football games in this league, those are errors that need to be kind of mitigated. And again, it's a good thing that it happened against a football team that's struggling right now, and because I think a better football team would take advantage. But again, in terms of things that I'm positive about, I thought the effort was good defensively, and I thought offensively there was a lot of really impressive things that Sam did. I thought there was a nice maturation there, and I think that's pretty positive. So
yeah, I think there's a lot of places to be optimism. This is the kind of game that there's a little bit of something for everyone.
Sure.
Right. Like, you only beat New England by 3. They're not very good at all. If anything, you like a pessimist view would kind of be like, oh, that's the class of team that we belong in. Like, those are our neighbors, and we just barely have a nicer house than them. I think by the optimist side, you go, well, shoot, if KJ Henry doesn't have one of the worst roughing calls we've ever seen in our lives called on him, there's 3 points off the board. If Sam just does anything but throw the ball right to Kyle Duggar in the end zone, then that's probably another 3 points. And then the whole demeanor and tenor of the game changes just on those 2 plays. Nevertheless, the B-Rob fumble, which is an uncharacteristic play by him. There's a couple of, like every game, there's a couple of plays that change it dramatically. But that's the nature of the NFL. And in that way, I think there is something for everyone. I'll take an optimistic view of the defense to start, and then we'll circle back to Sam and his performance in the offense. The 2 top rookies today played so much better. I mean, that's
Forbes played
easily the best game of Manuel Forbes' career. Like, they kept challenging him, and he was great. He nearly had the pick. That should have been an OPI, by the way, on Jalen Reagor. It's like if you're praising the wide receiver for becoming a DB, that doesn't mean he gets to commit PI and get away with it, because a DB never would. So that was a bad missed call on what should have been an even bigger play for Forbes. And then Quan comes through in the end. He's right place, right time, I think, more than anything else. But he gets the pick, he secures it, and I think that's obviously a fantastic sign to see some of the younger players in this rookie class that have, as a rookie class that hasn't really done anything positive so far this year outside of 1 or 2 select plays, that finally gets going here halfway through the rookie year, and you love to see that.
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch the All-22 with regards to Forbes and with regards to Quan more specifically, because I think Quan is a guy that's kind of in the mix. He's in the box. It's kind of hard to tell what he's doing. He's blitzing a ton. He's in coverage. So I just want to see what his role looked like today. And obviously, he's able to capitalize in a huge moment in the game. And you mentioned Forbes. I think rightfully so, man. He did a great job of kind of putting himself in position to make plays. And, Smoot always says it, right? You need like a confidence game, like a get right game. And I felt like, and Smoot felt like, and I felt like, and Tana felt like that this would be an opportunity, if you wanted to get Forbes some opportunity to play, because the level of competition from a receiver standpoint wasn't going to be AJ Brown. And I am glad that Forbes came out and did some good stuff from a coverage standpoint, nice and sticky, good instincts, all those things. The other thing is I thought he tackled better than I've seen him tackle the past couple of weeks. Like he's not, Brian Urlacher or Ray Lewis or anything like that, but he does get down in there and he forced some plays, which is something you hadn't seen from him a ton. So I think on the whole, I think that's a great point. A lot of positive things from those two young guys. I think the two rotational defensive ends who are now starting, Casey Toole and James, I thought both had solid performances. I thought it was nice that Andre had he batted a pass down and showed something. Obviously, that'll get fleshed out more as we get into the All-22. And then you mentioned
I think real quick on Jones, just to interject before I lose this train of thought on Jones, I do think some of his youth showed big time. Like there's some times he gets flushed inside and like, hey man, you got responsibilities. You got to watch how 95 and 96 do this. You can't just go run inside. And I know you're the pass rush guy, but that is some of the youth and why I think there's probably limited opportunities for him specifically compared to I was kind of surprised how much James and Casey played in this game. Like they kind of played that 90%, almost 80-85% of snaps probably. I don't have the math in front of me at this point, but that was pretty surprising. And I think those young guys are going to have to earn those reps in rotation by playing with a little bit more or a lot more discipline. We'll have to obviously have more on that later in the week.
No, 100%. But I think it's good to see them flash, that they have a pulse in terms of the defense. And again, like that's something that we'll figure out. But I do think, this is a take that Fred had. And it's like as a coach, you want guys that aren't going to get you fired. And I think that's what James and Casey do pretty consistently is they're not going to get you fired, right? They're going to do what they're supposed to do. They're going to be where they're supposed to be. They're going to fit runs correctly. And that's what they did. I thought there was some good stuff from Jamin. Like obviously they tried to get after him a little bit from a coverage standpoint. But I think there were times where he did some good stuff and like he made some plays when he had to make them. So obviously again, like for a comprehensive review of every single position, we'll be able to watch it in the All-22 and give you a better answer. But to your point, there are some positive things to take away from the defense from an individual standpoint. And oftentimes there are, even in the All-22. I just think I'm a little disappointed with the fact that this kind of bugaboo that keeps popping up for them in terms of explosive plays just keeps kind of popping up. And it's not an effort thing necessarily. It's just like that cross dog. I mean, what is like, you gotta make a play there, right? You got to get across the top. You got to play that correctly and fit that appropriately, or you're going to get stuff like this. And against a better football team, like that could have come and that could have been the deciding factor in the game. And I understand defensively you're not going to be perfect, but I do think that, in a game like this, and it's nice to have a game like this where you win a close competitive game, but you can make some of these corrections and coach hard off of it. And I think that's what I hope to see this week, because I do think that group is very, very talented. I mean, when I look at them on paper, when I look at the roster, I'm like, man, they do good things. They are talented. They play hard. It's just about eliminating some of those, those bugaboos. So.
Yeah, I think a pass game mistake, explosive play, sometimes as simple as one guy just getting beat.
Yeah.
I think the run game one, which they haven't had too many of.
They've been pretty good.
This year.
No, it's a good point.
But they on that play in particular, and this is kind of how it works in the running game. Like you have a mistake at one level, it's a 5-yard gain. You have a mistake at 2 levels, it's like a 10-yard gain. You have a mistake at 3 levels, it's a touchdown. And that's what happens. Like you get a huge hole up front. You get Jamin not getting over on the cross dog, and then St. Juice, I think it might have been Kendall, whoever the corner was, gets his face blocked off, 20 yards down the field, and Percy doesn't. I mean, that's a tough angle for Percy. Yeah. But you're hoping that he can make that play, and frankly, it's a tough play for Jamin. Like in a way, it's I think offensively. Like we're looking at it from New England side and we're doing a New England podcast. It's like, well, we caught him in the right look and we got it. It's a tough ask for Jamin. Mayo inherently, because he's cross-dogging, takes himself out of the play. Right. And so it's different than just like people flowing over the top and able to kind of cover. So it's a good play call by New England. It's a rough spot. You have answers defensively, but it takes a mistake at all three levels to give that up on that particular play. And that can't really happen in the NFL, especially against a team where the margin of error is going to be a lot smaller, which is every other team on the schedule for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think that's why it's a little bit frustrating. I mean, you win the game. You played well enough to win the game. You made stops when you had to make stops. You did what you were supposed to do most of the time. But I think this group is better than that. I think they're more talented than that. I think they've got enough players who can play more consistent than, and again, we're talking about one play, right? And when we get the all 22, we'll be able to talk about it more comprehensively and more nuanced. And that's why you guys listen to this podcast. But just leaving the game, I was like, man, it would have been nice if they could have had a cleaner sheet. And again, not to absolve the offense, but they fumbled the B-Rob's fumbles on like the 30-yard line or the 25-yard line, whatever it is. And so that's a short field. 2 plays later, they score. So there is offensive culpability in some of those points. But again, I think I have high expectations for that group, and I'm excited for that group still, even though they've struggled throughout the year. I want them to be the best version of themselves. And I think for this team to get where they got to go or where they want to go this year, even with the record being what it is, if Sam's playing football like this is an exciting opportunity. And so if the defense gets 10-15% better, they're going to be a headache for some teams. And I think that's something that's again something that makes me excited, right? Coming out of this game, there's a lot of I'm sure there's a lot of corrections that need to be made. I'm not the coach, but we'll watch it and we'll figure some of those out for the review pod. But I'm also man, for Sam to do what he did and for him to look like this 2 weeks in a row, maybe we are turning a corner. And if you do have a guy who, I don't want to say is your franchise guy because I hate anointing people so relatively early in the process, but he's showing you something. And if that something continues to blossom, then this could be awesome for this team and for this organization. So I think that's one of the reasons why I'm calling attention to some of the defensive mistakes, because I think if they do get that corrected, then man, we're coming out of this game with our heads held high, feeling really optimistic going up to Seattle.
No doubt about it. And I do want to go deeper on Sam in a second and kind of ask that question of where we are in the process with him, especially with John Allen's post-game comments where he's like, "This dude is the future." John said it. So don't get mad at me, Logan, when
I'm not
bring that up. But I think defensively, it sounds harsh, almost what you're saying, because they gave up 3 points in the second half. But if you watched, you see where they gave up 3 points in the second half in part because Mac Jones is Mac Jones. There's guys open. They missed some stuff. And against, it felt inevitable, the result in a lot of ways, because you knew that New England was incapable of making the plays. It's don't worry about it. Mac will screw it up somehow, or the ball will go through Juju Smith-Schuster's hands at the end. And, I don't know if you were at that point.
Jalen Reagor drops that post,
Oh, yeah. Balls go through. That's not even on Mac, a couple of the biggest plays of the game. And, I don't know what the hell Jonathan Vilma, who I think is pretty good. Calling games is hard, doing stuff in the moment. But on the broadcast at the end, he's like, "No, that's." And I think kind of what happened was he called it one way initially, and he didn't want to admit that he was wrong, which happens sometimes. But he's blaming it on Mac, and it's he hit a dude in the hands and they're down a field goal. They weren't in field goal range, and he threw a ball that should have gotten there. You have, the ability to get up and spike it and kick a makeable field goal to send the thing to overtime. Juju's got to catch the ball, and he doesn't. It goes through his hands, and Quan Martin finishes. And that's what we talked about coming out of last week's game with the Eagles was, can you finish? And at the end of the day, well, it wasn't perfect from Washington, just like it wasn't perfect for Philly last week.
Yeah.
They finished. And when you finish plays in the NFL, you win football games. When you don't, you lose. And that's kind of the story in terms of Commanders defense versus Patriots offense for today. On the other side of the ball, the story is that Sam Howell looks really good. And he passed a test that he hadn't passed yet, which is facing a complex defense. Some of his biggest games came against defenses that, well talented and good, and say Philadelphia, definitely play it on a more simpler side of things, and he showed an ability to dissect that. But today he passes the kind of test that we've been waiting for, Logan, and I'm curious where that puts him with you now a couple of big games in a row, bouncing back, showing that maturity, showing that resilience, and looking every bit of a franchise quarterback at this point in what is almost his rookie season.
Yeah, and again, I don't like christening people, but everything, like you said, is is trending in that direction, and that's awesome. And the fact that I think the most important thing is that he gets better each week, even after a bad loss. Like, he learns from that and he gets better, and he's been better in the pocket. And today you saw some of his athleticism outside the pocket. You saw some of his ability to extend inside the pocket. And I think that's one thing, even though some of those plays are really good, I would just be like, hey man, against a better pass rush, you can't vacate clean pockets. But he comes out and makes plays, like 3 explosive plays to Brian Pringle off Byron Pringle, off of scrambles, which is great. The throw to Jahan, awesome, right? Like, there was just so much positive stuff. The ball to Terry, where Terry kind of runs that kind of deep angled corner. That's a tough throw.
Yeah.
And he's delivering those things at a high level. His ability to kind of hit the quick game, Logan Thomas underneath. EB, I thought, called a great game, but I also think it's important to note that Sam elevated the game plan. Like, EB didn't have to call a perfect game, because even when it was like a kind of a, they had it covered or it wasn't perfect, Sam did what Sam does and elevated the thing and elevated the play. And I think that's something that, again, that gives me more optimism. Now it's 2 games in a row, and the good ones do it for long stretches. They do it for years. And so, obviously they got another big test come up here against Seattle, but to your point, and it's something that says, man, if this is real with the playmakers that he's got, the way the O-line, I think they deserve a ton of credit. They're playing a lot better. Not a lot of missed protections today. They had one, which is maybe tough, kind of in a man look, didn't get ID'd correctly. I don't know whose fault that is, but they're playing better, and they've been playing. I think they've been playing at this level the whole time, but now you're getting to see it because Sam is being better about not taking sacks and getting the ball out of his hands. So that offense is definitely trending in the right direction, and it's exciting for sure.
For sure. And I mean, let's also acknowledge that I think this line has played 2 games versus the whatever that Gates played, but like Larson is making a difference.
Sure.
They've identified stuff correctly 2 weeks in a row, and they were definitely struggling with that. And maybe they're able to take some of that off of Sam's plate, where not as much with Gates, because Larson started double plus the amount of games. I mean, period. And like 5 times as many games at center as Nick Gates had. I would also wonder, this would be the point in our review pod or in our instant reaction pod where I give you a homework assignment. Like, I wonder how much more kind of the stoutness of Larson and Paul is helping Sam. I mean, that's one of the things that came up as we were kind of dissecting all of the issues with Sam and pressure and sacks earlier in the year. And someone brought up it was a YouTube comment, and I wish I need to go back and find it so I can just start crediting this person for a very good point they made. But it was like in New Orleans with Breeze, because of his height, like they had a very specific kind of guard, and those guards were super stout, and they were like Pro Bowl level guys, but just maybe it's an extra half yard of pocket, where with a quarterback that's 6 foot instead of 6'4", that could matter in a way that is significant. And I just wonder if he's seeing things better, if Paul and Larson being a little bit bigger bodied, and having different advantages versus what Sadiq and Gates brought, and especially Sadiq with the athleticism, is that actually, even though the offensive line was playing fine, this isn't hindsight and trying to say that they actually stunk, when we know that they were providing an adequate amount of time and whatever. Is this style of play and the way they block a better fit with Sam Howell? I think that would be an interesting thing to look at. I don't even know if that's visible on tape, because you'd have to like start getting out like markers and protractors and stuff to see how deep and set those pockets are. But it is something that I wonder and I think about with Larson and Paul in there. It also could be a 2-game sample size, and he could get wrecked for 7 sacks next week against Seattle. And this is all going to sound very silly. But I do think the bigger thing, Logan, for me in terms of the progression on, like, is he the franchise guy, is there's some quarterbacks who kind of like, are you figuring it out? They just survive in the league. And you're like, I don't know if you can kind of figure it out. Maybe he can be a game manager. He does stuff that's just special, man. Like the unteachable stuff that he does. And you see it today in a guy like CJ Stroud in Houston. And like, I think both of us would take Stroud in an instant over Howell right now, with CJ being younger, being second overall pick for a reason, all that kind of stuff. But like Stroud makes some really special throws where you're just like, that dude's going to be fine in this league. And Sam does the same stuff. And I think if Sam, like the quiz that I give myself is, if Sam was a first-round pick, even last year, nevertheless this year, how would we be talking about him?
You'd be feeling pretty good about it. Like, you'd be feeling great about it.
It was a first-round pick. He was a 5th.
I
And
know.
like that, at that point, it shouldn't matter. If you'd feel good about it, you should feel good about it. And I think that is where this organization is. And I don't think that they're wrong.
Yeah, and I think like everyone's making fun of Ron for that comment. He said, "Oh, like what are we gonna do about the defensive line being gone?" He's like, "Well, we got the quarterback," and I know that's everyone's been kind of getting on him about it, but there's some
It's
truth
me.
there.
I'm the person. Like just answer the question that's presented to you. That doesn't mean that your point that you made instead is wrong. I just don't. There's enough politicians in DC who answer the questions that aren't asked. You don't need to be another one. You be the football coach.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is like in football, like that's such a big part. That's such a huge part. And obviously if this is it, and again, we're talking about if and maybes and all these different things, but he's shown
Sure.
enough. It's the same thing. Like you watch that Will Levis game against Pittsburgh and you see a couple of moments where you're like, he is the only person in the league that can make that throw. Like the moxie there, the courage, right? With Will Levis. And Sam, every couple of games, you see something and you're like, wow, that is incredibly bright. That's incredibly shiny. Like I think about the Philly game, the touchdown to Logan Thomas, you see it from the wide, you're like, nah, that's okay. You go to the end zone, man. He's throwing a little bit sidearm in between two offensive linemen over Nakobe Dean's outstretched hands into a tight window with Logan Thomas. And I'm like, that is special, right? You go back, you watch the Broncos game, there's like 10 special throws in there. You watch this game, the throw to Jahan is on the money, like special. The ability to extend the play, hit Byron Pringle for an explosive play, special. And so it's just about, does that continue to develop into kind of the cerebral, that kind of undefinable element of playing quarterback? And I guess it sounds like you're excited. I'm excited because it seems to be trending in that way. Now it's what is it? 8 games that they've played so far this year.
9
and
now. Yeah. They're
9.
4-5.
Yeah. And that in and of itself is a very small statistical sample. So he might hit a regression at some point and it might be terrible. But the fact that the way he talks in the media, the way he plays,
Yes.
the competitive nature, the natural kind of quiet leadership you've got, it feels like it's heading in that direction. It reminds me a lot of like Kirk Cousins. And I feel better about this than I do about Kirk because there's more talent there. There's more physical ability there than with Kirk, but it's the same type of approach seemingly. So that's pretty exciting for me. And again, like you said, lot of what ifs still to be answered here. But again, if this is it, think about what you can do in the draft next year. Thinking about what you can do with all that cap space. There's so much available to this team in terms of improvement. And all of a sudden, the model for winning a Super Bowl is now laid at your feet because you found a guy in the 5th round on a rookie deal, and you can just build a roster around him. And so I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but that is what this means if it turns out to be true.
Right. 100%. And that's the thing is, it's like, if you found a guy that can get you by, like in the 5th round, that's still kind of exciting. Like, wow, we don't have to worry about quarterback. I think the thing that's exciting for me, that's like thrilling to think about if you let yourself like just run away with optimism, is he could not just be like a survive guy. He could thrive.
Yeah.
He's good. Like
Yeah.
You talked about some of the special throws, and I'll name some of the other ones, like the ability to roll out and keep his eyes down the field. The 24-yard scramble on 3rd and 23.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is that? Like, that's big time stuff. And you kind of see him like doing the calculation. Like, should I get down? I've been told I got to get down more. No, it's 3rd down. This is the time they said I can go be college Sam Howell and run around and be a pinball. Like, this is cool. Bong, bong, off the walls he goes. And then all of a sudden he's got a 1st down. Like, there's the quick arm strength stuff. There is the mobile, like multiple arm angle stuff. And you said it too, like his ability in not just the media, but his ability in the locker room. Like, you hear him post game and he's talking about how he is one of the guys that's talking to Emmanuel Forbes to keep his head in the game. Like, he is showing a moxie and a leadership that we saw the tiniest of glimpse of last year. And I will always go back to this moment with Howell and the look on Ron Rivera's face after the Dallas game, when he's talking about, we got everything we need in this room. And Ron kind of looks and he's like, wait, I had that guy here the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, we were messing around with these other dudes, and we had to, like, all due respect to Carson Wentz, but like we had to build a foam, pad around Carson to make sure his feelings getting hurt. And we had this dude with this moxie the whole time.
Right.
Like, that is the kind of stuff that you go, oh, you have it here, which is the non-negotiable part to be great. and then you can continually work on reading defenses and having an understanding of the game. And we know he's got physical talent. So yeah, man, like,
and I just want to,
there's still stuff that has to be worked on, but there's not just like good enough there. There's really good there.
yeah, and I think that's what I want to point out is like, obviously we're excited, but like we understand that this is a process and he's still growing in that process and we still need to see more things answered. But like, I don't think it's surprising that Ron is always referencing this as the thing of his tenure here.
For sure.
Because if it is the thing, it changes the organization. So again, like we're excited about him. Excited offensive line's playing better. Nice to see the receivers get more touches throughout the whatchamacallit, the depth chart, I guess, right? Or the list
the
there.
Roster,
the roster. There you go.
And by the way, what'd your boy say at the end of pregame?
What was it, Jahan? It was something about Jahan.
8 targets, they win. How many do you have?
I don't know. Did he have 8?
8 on the nose. Let's
there
go.
You go. There you go. Predictive. What do they call that? Like you're a psychic now.
Statistics.
So
That's
I think
analytics, kids. It's not analytics.
And so I think like offensively, a lot of good stuff. And now it's just about, can some of these holes in the defense, because I think they didn't play terribly. I don't want that to come out of here. But there's a couple things, probably 5 things like you were talking about, that if you fill those in, maybe they make a late run here. And it reminds me a little bit of 2012. Obviously, they've got a little ways to go before they're there, but it reminds me of that a little bit. And it's just about whether they can clean up those 5 to 10 plays a game defensively and transversely offensively too. There's a couple of plays in there, the fumble, the interception, that you're saying, man, they're so close to being right there. And I know this is a bad New England team, but that defense is good. That's a good defense. And they did what they needed to do. And they played better than I thought they were going to play, to be quite honest. So that's another reason why I'm excited.
Yeah. But it's got to turn into, and the thing is, like, it's, if let's say Sam actually throws that ball out of bounds at the end of the first half, and then they come back on the next play and score a touchdown, like, how differently do we feel about this game if the final score is 27-17 versus 20-17, right? Like, that one play and the potential for one more to follow it changes dramatically. But if they go put up 27 on this New England defense, like, whoo. But that's the NFL. You can do that every single week. What if this guy does that? What if like if Rager catches the post, if one other thing goes right, like maybe we're talking about game. New England dropping 30 on the Commanders. So that is the nature of things. Anything else from the game that you would like to get to?
Obviously, we're going to talk about more in-depth stuff in terms of film review, but I think Jamison Crowder's a guy that needs a little bit of a shout-out. He does a really nice job back there catching punts. Like, he does a great job, and he does a great job of getting you 10 to 12 to 15 yards every single time, and that's been a sneaky bump for this offense and for this team, and so I wanted to give him a shout-out before we moved on.
100%. I mean, I think the problem last year was they didn't want to risk Jahan, and they didn't have anybody who could reliably catch it outside of Dax Milne. And when we were like, hey, the best thing catching it's the most important thing. It's still true, but Jameson catches it and then some. And you see the value of having the and then some, for sure. And interestingly, Dax Milne with his 4-week injury has not come back off of IR this year. And, them's be the breaks. Byron Pringle, I think, also deserves a shout out. We mentioned him a little bit earlier, but like, he wound up being the guy that I think played a lot more this week offensively with the Curtis Samuel injury, and he did a fantastic job. Still, man, God, Diami, you talk about plays that could have been made. If Diami catches that ball that goes through his hands, it's so frustrating because I think Diami is better than people realize, but he's still
so much
potential. Because like he's better.
Was that before the pick? Was that before the interception?
And it was right before the pick. It was the same drive.
Yeah.
And Jahan may have had one. There was someone else who had a ball that was like well placed.
I know he had those 2 one-hand attempts that he kind of like.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll get those in the all-22.
I'm forgetting the details now, but the main thing is like Diami does such a good job doing a lot of dirty work. Like he's a great blocker and does a lot of stuff. But man, if he could ever just develop as a receiver, like as a catching the ball receiver. That would be cool. And you're kind of reminded of that during the game, like with Rager. It's like, this guy's so explosive. He's so talented. Why can't he put it together? Oh, right. Because he can't catch. which is a kind of important part of playing wide receiver in the NFL. And it was interesting during the broadcast even. They're talking about how Jahan went back and he's like, what did I do at Penn State that I don't do as well now? Oh, I catch the ball. That's where my production went. So, catching the ball, important. That's the kind of insight you come to the Take Command podcast for.
It's true, though.
All right. That is all for the instant reaction version of the podcast. We go much deeper on our tape review. We tape it Tuesday mornings. Often some of it sneaks out on YouTube by Tuesday night. And then Wednesday morning, it is in your audio feeds. And then, of course, we will get ready for Seattle on Friday. If you can come hang out with us, Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. We'll be there at 1 o'clock on Sunday. So that'll be fun, Logan. We'll get to watch all the games. We preview Commanders and Seahawks. So we'll see everybody at Tap then. For Logan Paulson, I'm Craig Hoffman. Thanks for watching and listening. And we will see you for the tape review pod midweek.